She said I can't do this. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife came home from the grocery store. She saw the notebook on the table in front of me and the pen in my hand and asked, "What are you doing?" I decided to accept your challenge. I don't remember last week when we read these stories on that internet site? I commented on how bad some of them were and said that I could even write better. You said I can't. They say I have no creative streak. I guess I really said that, but my comment was based on what I know about your grades when we were in school. You always got B's and C's for your work in classes that required written reports, and you got a C for the work you had to do for business research and report writing. Well, I think I can do a better job now. Doesn't matter. Come on, help me bring in the groceries. I helped her carry her bags and helped her put some things away, and then I sat back at the table and began to write. While preparing dinner, she asked, "What is it about?" I won't say anything. I'll let you read it when I'm done, and you can critique it before I put it on the site. I didn't think it would be too difficult. Yes, everything I did in college didn't bring me excellent grades, but then I didn't need it. I only did what I had to do to survive these classes. I didn't want to be there at all, but my parents more or less forced me to. My dad wouldn't let me work in the family business without a bachelor's degree in business management. I worked there after school and summers since I was 13, and I wanted to work there when I graduated from high school, but Dad said no, only with an academic degree. This is necessary so that you can work full-time, so I've come to terms with it. He received his degree and went to work in the family business. I looked down at the notebook, picked up a pen, and began. My name is Josh Barnum. I am an aircraft mechanic for a major airline and married to Melinda Barnum. Melinda, I call her Melly, is an office manager for an insurance company. Melly and I have been together for a little over 11 years, married for 9 of them. We met in our second year of college, and for me, it was love at first sight. For Melly, maybe. It took me 3 months to arrange a date with her. We clicked. On our 7th date, we made love for the first time. After that, we became a permanent couple and usually made love 2 to 3 times a week, at least until summer. I had a summer job working for my Uncle Bill, who owned a landscaping company. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day from Monday to Saturday. As a result, I was rarely able to see Melly during the week. After 3 weeks of seeing each other only on Sundays, Melly started dating other guys. When I complained about it, she said to deal with it or lose your Sundays. This was a defining moment in our relationship. I already said that when it came to Melly, it was love at first sight, so I gave in so as not to lose her completely. At the time, I didn't realize what a mistake this was. It showed her that she could get away with a lot with me, and I would leave it at that. It was 3 weeks later on a Friday, and I had only worked 6 hours before calling a break due to severe thunderstorms. I called Melly to see if she would go out with me that night, and she told me she already had a date. I hung up without saying another word. I called around to see if anything was going on and found out that Mike Matson was having a party at his house. I called and found out that I was welcome, so I decided to go. Bad move on my part. I walked in just in time to see Melly hug and then kiss Dick Moore. They then took to the makeshift dance floor where Melly cuddled up to Moore as they slowly danced. Moore held her ass with both hands and pressed her tightly to him. Melly wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled his face to hers, and gave him a hot, long kiss. When the song ended, they seemed to reluctantly pull away from each other, but when they finally did, Melly saw me. She said something to Dick and then walked towards me. I turned and left the party. I'll be damned if I'm stuck here while she kisses someone else. The weather wasn't bad on Saturday, so I ended up switching to a 12-hour workday. I've learned not to waste time calling Melly on a Saturday night to set up a date for Sunday because she'll be seeing someone. I usually called her on Sunday around 10 and arranged something for the afternoon and evening. But that Sunday morning, I didn't call. It was one thing to know that she dated when I was unavailable, but it was another thing entirely to know that she kissed her beau. It seemed like the heat I noticed between her and her beau was some kind of sign that they were probably having sex. This put a bad thought into my head. According to what Melly told me, she hadn't dated any guy for more than 4 dates. The question I was asking myself after what I saw with Matson was, Has Melly slept with all the guys? If that was the case, I might have gotten into trouble since we used to make love on our Sunday dates, and I had heard and believed that when you have sex with someone, you have sex with everyone that person has had sex with sex. I thought maybe getting tested for STDs would be a good idea. Thinking that since Melly hadn't heard from me on Sunday morning, she might call me, I got the hell out of the house and stayed out all day. When I got home for dinner, my mom told me that Melly had called twice and wanted me to call her when I got home. I waited until I finished dinner to call her. She immediately got down to business. Why didn't you call me this morning? I just thought, given the way you kissed that guy, that I was replaced. We already talked about this, Josh. I won't stay at home just because you can't come. I know, and I came to terms with it when I thought it was just platonic dating, but what I saw was way, way beyond platonic. I thought we had something special, Melissa, but I'm not so sure anymore. Don't say that, Josh. We really have something special. We need to talk, baby. I don't care how long you work tomorrow, but when you're free, come to me. You will do this. I think I can. Do you promise? Okay, I'll be there as soon as I'm free. Monday was a 12-hour workday, so I didn't get to Melly's house until just after 8. Her mom opened the door and told me that Melly was waiting for me on the patio. Melly was talking on the phone with her back to the door when I walked outside, and what I overheard before she closed her phone didn't bode well for our relationship. What I heard was, "I like it what happened on Friday. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I have to go. He'll be here soon. Bye." I went back into the house and then I opened the patio door with a lot of noise and she turned around and saw me coming out of the house. I didn't give any indication that I had overheard anything. I just walked up to the table and sat down. I just looked at her and waited. She finally realized that I wasn't going to start a conversation, so she said, "What happened, Josh? You agreed for me to go on a date when you can't find time." "Yeah, but I thought these dates were like going to the movies and maybe a milkshake at Harry's. Or maybe a party like Matson's where you could dance and hang out with our friends. Simple things, acting like you're still my girlfriend, not like what I saw from Matson. The way you swapped spit with that guy and let him run his hands all over your body without even trying to stop him pretty much told me that if he didn't already have you, he would soon. Not exactly how I expected my girlfriend to act in front of my friends. These are disgusting things you say to me. What is? Maybe you should just leave. This is probably the best way. After what I've seen, and not knowing how you feel about all your dates, I think it would be a good idea to get tested. I stood up and left her there with a shocked look on her face. I managed to get to my car before she caught up with me. You don't really think about me that way, do you? What I saw on Friday night was pretty gross, Melly. I do not want to risk. I got into the car and drove away, and she stood and looked after me. I did get tested. They were clear, but I never called Melly and told her about it. We avoided each other for a little over a week. And then on Thursday, while I was having lunch in the student cafeteria, Melly came to my table, sat down and said, "You didn't call me on Sunday. It is not necessary. You're being unfair, Josh. Why do you expect me to stay home 6 days a week because of your job? Maybe because I look at it as learning. What the hell does that mean? Perhaps this is to prepare you for what you may have to do after you get married, and your husband has a job that requires him to work late. This is just stupid. Being married is not the same as going to school. Maybe you look at it that way, but not the way I do. You knew all along that I intended to ask you to marry me after high school, and you led me to believe that you would say yes. You know that my specialty is aviation maintenance management, and when I graduate, I will have an aircraft and propulsion license. My goal is to work for an airline and advance my career. Chances are good that if I do join the airline as a new recruit, I will have the worst shift and the worst days off. If you can't handle my work schedule now, how are you going to handle my 3 to 11 shift with Tuesdays and Wednesdays off? That's another matter. I will work too, and we will do what we must to adapt to our circumstances. This is in the future if we have it. Right now, we need to survive as a couple. and I'm not sure we can, given what I now know about your dating life. We agreed to talk that evening after I finished work, and she finally gave in and said she would only date on Fridays and Saturdays, and would always make sure. The dates were with my friends. That way, I could always ask someone if she was doing anything that wouldn't pass the boyfriend test. It helped that landscaping was a seasonal job that ended in late fall. I kept a close eye on her for the rest of our course and throughout graduation, and she only lost her temper 3 times, while I pretended I didn't know anything. Why? Blame it on love. When we finished school, Melly moved in with me, and we lived together while my parents were preparing the wedding. It was a new experience for both of us, to be able to make love every day and not be in a rush to return home. There were nights when I was not at all sure that I would be able to get out of bed in the morning. It seemed like all Melly and I, oh yes, myself, wanted was to make love all the time. But of course we couldn't. I really got along with the airline and, as always, I had the worst shift from 4 to midnight, with Wednesday and Thursday off. Melly had a degree in accounting and got a job at an accounting firm where she worked from 8 to 5, with Saturdays and Sundays off. During tax season, from about the end of January to the 1st of May, she usually worked 10 to 12 hours a day and sometimes had to work on Saturdays. We got married 5 months after graduating from high school, and our wedding gift from both sets of parents was a down payment on a 4-bedroom ranch in one of the city's best neighborhoods. Neither of us wanted to have children until we were established in our jobs, so Melly used one of the bedrooms as a home office. The back of the house had a fairly large patio, and one of our first purchases after moving was a hot tub that was installed on one side of the patio. It didn't take long before it was filled. A month after installing the tub, we had a housewarming party, and after everyone tried out the tub, it felt like we had company over every weekend. It's not that I like this company. I had to leave at 2:45 to get to work on time. As we got to know our neighbors, we started getting invited to barbecues and picnics. And once that started, we of course had to host a couple of our own. We became really good friends with the neighbors on either side of us and those who live right across the street. The first 2 years everything went great and we adjusted to our different schedules. And then everything changed. I didn't find out about this until much later, but it was pretty much what I was talking about when I talked to Melinda back in college. I worked Friday and Saturday, and Melinda was tired of sitting at home on her best date nights. At first, it was a walk with the girls after work on Friday. Evenings she never told me about. After a couple of months, she decided that since she could get away with not knowing about her going out with the girls, then she could get away with going out on Saturdays. She just needed to be home, in bed, by the time I got home. She started going on dates with guys she worked with and guys she met at parties. I don't know when this all started, so I had no idea how long it went on. But I was told about it by a neighbor who lived across the street. He was having drinks with a client on Friday night after dinner and saw Melinda dirty, dancing with some guy and acting like a pussy. Saturday morning, when Melinda was out shopping, he came over and told me what he saw. This upset me, but did not surprise me. He told me that his brother was a police officer who worked as a private detective on his days off, and his brother's days off were Friday and Saturday. His brother's rate was 25% of what a full-time private investigator would charge, so I asked him to help get his brother to contact me. All it cost me was that he followed Melinda from Friday, when she left work, until she went home, and Saturday, from the time I left for work until she left. Home cost $600, and it was worth every penny. On Friday, when Melinda came home from work, she headed straight to the bar, and before she could sit down on the bar stool, the guy bought her a drink and danced with her. They left the bar at 8 and checked into Motel 6, and yes, they left the light on, and stayed in room 107 until 11, and then she went home. On Saturday, she didn't even leave the house. At 4, Philby, her boss, stopped by, and although Spencer, the policeman, couldn't film what was going on in the house, he did get some pretty good footage of them having sex. On my first day off, I took everything I had to a divorce lawyer, and after reviewing what I had, he suggested that I contact her boss for alienation of affection and her company, if the policies and procedures manual Their companies know anything about the relationship between managers and those they supervise. Her boss owns the company, and when I told him this, I could almost see dollar signs in his eyes. I told him to go ahead and get to work. He told me to give him a week or so, and he would prepare the documents for signature. I left his office, hoping that I could act like an ignorant fool, which I was until I received Spencer's report. I probably succeeded, because next to me, Melinda didn't seem any different. The lawyer called me a week later and said that he had documents ready for me to sign. When I came to his office, he smiled and said that he had very good news for me. Apparently, her boss was bragging to everyone in the office about having Melinda. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that the overheard conversation is just rumors. Essentially, it's a case of he said, she said. Maybe if it hadn't been recorded on tape. The man from whom I got the tape hates Philby and is always looking for some way to do some mischief. Isn't there some law that says both parties must be aware of the tape? In some states, yes, but ours is not one of them. Then, it's okay. Go ahead and do what you think is best. I finished the story, reread it, and decided everything was fine. Dinner time was approaching. I called my wife from the kitchen and gave her the story, asking her to read and comment. She took the story from me and started reading it. About halfway through, she started to frown and finally gasped, loudly, looked at me and fainted. I stood up, took a glass of water, and splashed it in her face. She muttered something as I helped her up. Just then, the doorbell rang and I told her it was probably hers. She looked embarrassed as I walked her to the door. A young blonde girl stood there. The blonde stopped chewing her gum long enough to ask, "Mrs. Melinda Barnum?" Melinda said yes, and the blonde handed her an envelope with the words, "You've been served. Have a nice evening." Melinda didn't hear the last phrase. She fainted again when she heard that she had been served. This time I didn't bother with a glass of water. I just grabbed her leg and pulled her into the house to close the door, and then went to the kitchen and got myself a beer. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.